friends, another journal episode. Thanks for watching the channel. I'll make sure you subscribe. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers. I already have the watch hours I need for monetization. So once I get to 1,000 subs, the channel is monetized. I can make a little kickback from the channel. This channel is going to be composed of a bunch of different things, just like my regular life, my daily life. I'm going to have a lot of ride footage videos where I just go somewhere and show you California. I think that's always going to be really fun. And I want to start doing these sit down and talk videos where I talk about different topics. So first of all, if there's any topics that you want me to talk about in about a 10 to 12 minute format that you might think I have some knowledge about, just if you know my background, you know what I'm interested in, just let me know. I'm really looking for lots of different topics. So today, I wanted to talk about weight loss, getting in shape, and particularly Ozempic. So everybody knows what these drugs are. They're all over the place. Everybody's taking them. Originally made for type 2 diabetes. Now they're being used for people who just want to lose modest amounts of weight. And they're also starting to use these types of drugs off-label for different sort of impulse control things, like for alcoholics, for drug addicts. They're going to find lots of different reasons to use this drug. This is already probably the biggest selling drug in the entire world right now. The company that makes this drug just makes an incredible amount of money. Hey, what's up, buddy? You want to talk about weight loss? So, without getting too deep into the science of Ozempic, I mean, do I really understand it? Am I a doctor? No. But I am a person that has struggled with my own weight basically up until about the age of 40. I'm 54 now. I've had it basically under somewhat control for about 15 years. I always had like appetite issues where I couldn't stop myself from eating the bad foods, lots and lots of the bad foods. So, you know, for me, a bag of potato chips is always endless. It's always bottomless. I always eat all of them. And if I'm gonna eat like a sweet, like a chocolate or ice cream, again, I eat it to the bottom of the container. These types of processed sweets, in my opinion, this is what's making people overweight. Not overconsumption of meat. It's overconsumption of processed foods, especially processed carbohydrates. Most people can sit down and have a steak, a salad, a baked potato, 3 non-processed types of foods, and eat a modest amount and get full, get satiated. But if you're gonna have pizza, McDonald's, all different types of crap like that, high carbohydrate foods like spaghetti, you know, white flour foods, those foods are really hard to stop eating. Everybody knows that. They're called hyperpalatable foods. So you start eating these foods and you can't stop. And many of us in the United States, we were just raised on these foods. In my house growing up, we ate out almost every single night. We had pizza, McDonald's, Chinese food. Those were like the trilogy of dinners that we had in our house. My mother wasn't really that frequent of a cooker. She can cook a little bit and she had the skills to cook, but you know, we could afford it, so we would eat out a lot. We would even feed our dog McDonald's. We'd give our dog 2 hamburgers and French fries. It's fucking crazy, with the bun. So if you grew up on these foods, it's really easy to think that there's something wrong with your appetite, that you have no appetite control. So if you grow up in America, you're growing up on all these processed foods from the very beginning. You had sugary cereals for breakfast. If you had school lunch, it was pizza or some other white flour processed food. And for dinner, again, it was Chinese food, pizza, fast food, McDonald's, all types of stuff like that. But again, if you grow up on these types of foods, I think you can easily think that there's something wrong with your appetite control. But in my opinion, it's really related to the foods. I've known people, some people, not very many, kind of people from the yoga world that I met here in California, who for whatever reason, when they were young, their family didn't eat junk food. And these people almost universally are not overweight as they get older. And that's because they started with the right foods. I think your eating habits start very, very young. I think once you pass the age of 30, it's very, very hard to change your eating habits. So what's Ozempic really for? Ozempic, I think, is good for somebody who needs to lose a lot of weight. In order for your doctor to prescribe you Ozempic, you're really supposed to have type 2 diabetes. But for sure, doctors are prescribing, without type 2 diabetes, this drug. That is definitely happening for sure. I think the definition of type 2 diabetes can be a little bit flexible. The markers for type 2 diabetes seem to be open for interpretation. So who should take Ozempic? I think if you need to lose a lot of weight. I think if you're a woman and you've had an extra 25 pounds on your body for more than a couple of years, or if you're a man, if you have more than 30 pounds and you've had that for a couple of years, that could be a good reason to take Ozempic because the benefits of losing weight are tremendous. You know, you're going to lower your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your blood sugar numbers. You'll improve all the markers that are really important to your long-term health by taking Ozempic. The problem that I find with Ozempic is it doesn't really address the problem, the psychological problem of why are we addicted to these foods. First, again, I said it is biological. You're biologically addicted to these foods because you've had these foods since you're very young. But the people that I know who have lost weight, they've changed their attitude completely towards food, completely changed their lifestyle. If you can get yourself off processed foods for any length of time and then start eating natural foods, you'll find yourself being satiated, being full by regular foods without seriously overeating. It's almost impossible to feel full on potato chips, on McDonald's, on pizza. That stuff just makes you temporarily full, and then you're hungry very soon after. And even when you're eating those foods, like I say, the bottom of a bag of potato chips seems like it's endless. My main reason for not recommending most people take these weight loss drugs is you're not addressing the psychological reason as to why you're overeating. The way I look at life, I think it's kind of like the yogi's perspective on life is you want to stare your problems right in the face, and you don't want to constantly be putting band-aids on these problems. So there's different ways you can put a band-aid on a problem. You could drink alcohol, you could smoke cigarettes, smoking weed, which you guys all know that I do. It's also sort of a band-aid. I call it a stimulus. You're stimming yourself. So why do people need to stimulate themselves with alcohol, bad food, cannabis, over-exercising? There's lots of different ways you can stimulate yourself, but you have to figure out the psychological reason why you have these issues. And if you're taking Ozempic, if you take a drug that basically destroys your appetite, destroys your ability to digest, you're never really addressing these issues. So you might lose weight, you might look better on the outside, but I promise you, these people that have lost this weight, they might have a short period of time where they're elated, very excited to finally have this weight off their body. But I think after a year, 2 years on Ozempic, you still have the mindset of an overweight person. So what should you do? I do believe that most people should probably go to therapy if you have food issues. Not that I ever went. I got a little bit lucky. I moved to California, sort of fell into the yoga self-help community, and the work that I did on myself didn't happen with a therapist, but it happened with mentors. I had lots and lots of mentors out here in California, and I think that's one thing that most young people just don't have nowadays is a mentor, somebody to look up to. So I knew many people who let themselves get out of shape when they were younger. They got older and they found yoga, they found just exercise in general. They found a lifestyle that will keep weight off them without being extremely restrictive, without being punishing to the body, to the mind. I just think it's really important that you address these mental issues as to why are you overeating. There's many, many reasons why a person would overeat. Maybe you were abused as a child. Many people who were abused as a child, they end up being overweight. They use the food to medicate the feelings that they've had in them since they were kids. Big issue with Ozempic is if you want to keep the weight off that you lose, if you're on Ozempic, you're not developing the coping skills, the life skills to eat the proper diet. You're just biologically finding yourself with completely reduced appetite. And I really hate the idea of any drug that slows down your ability to digest. Because think about it, when you're a young person, many people found that they could eat much, much more than when they were older. When you're younger, your metabolism is faster and you can eat more food without gaining weight. Part of a good metabolism is having great digestion, meaning you can eat food and digest it properly rather than it sitting in your stomach or converting to body fat. Good digestion is essential to a long-term health plan. And the idea that these drugs basically slow down your ability to digest drives me crazy. Think about old people, okay? Think about the difference between, let's say you're young, we'll define that under 30, and then 30 to 50, 30 to 60, and then 60 plus. Most people who are 60 plus and above, their digestion is incredibly compromised from their crappy lifestyle. I think to cultivate good digestion, good digestive abilities is really important. And if you're taking a drug that slows down your digestion, what's going to happen to you when you get older? Let's not forget, too, that when you lose a lot of weight on Ozempic, it's been proven that you lose a lot of muscle mass. So you're basically slowing down your basal metabolic rate, which to me is extremely important. My key to losing weight was getting control of the amount of processed foods that I eat, exercising regularly, and maybe some psychological tricks that I've learned as a yoga student from my mentors, mostly about being good to myself, using mantras, using positive self-talk, because most of us are walking around saying terrible things to ourselves. There's plenty of scientific reasons to avoid using Ozempic. It's been proven that common problems that people have from taking Ozempic is they have constipation, diarrhea, nausea. I mean, doesn't that sound wonderful? How would you like to live with that for your entire life. I don't look at taking these drugs as a long-term plan. Now, if you want to compare it to something, I take TRT, I take some testosterone replacement therapy. But that's just replacing the levels of testosterone that I had when I was younger. Ozempic doesn't simulate what you were when you were younger. Ozempic and these types of drugs simulate what your digestion is going to be when you're older. If you've ever seen older people eat, you'll notice that you've almost never seen an obese senior citizen. Because if you want to make it to that age, most people develop some sort of an ability to control their food, or your body does it for you, where your body really slows down your digestion. So as you get older, you eat less. So to be 30 years old and going on a drug like Ozempic, forget about 30, maybe 50, and going on this drug, it's the beginning of permanently slowing down your digestion. And what's going to happen to you when you get older? So I think people need to learn the coping skills necessary to eat the proper diet, to exercise, to do stress reduction techniques. That was a big part of why I lost weight. I got really deep into yoga, really deep into meditation. Just a really good opportunity to look deep at yourself, figure out what your problems are, figure out a solution. Now, most people should do this with a therapist. Again, if you're lucky like me, I just had a lot of mentors, a lot of experienced yoga teachers, fellow yoga students that used to be overweight, they used to have these overeating issues, and then they beat these issues. They beat these issues basically by falling in love with themselves. Not to be corny, but that's why I believe in mantras, I believe in working self-help programs, whatever they might be. But I think that Ozempic completely disregards the psychological aspect of weight loss. And I think the longer you're overweight, the more your overweight situation comes from something psychological, not biological. I don't believe for a second that people who are overweight just have slow metabolisms. I think they're just eating the wrong diet. Now, don't get me wrong. I know how hard it is to stick to a diet. I can understand why somebody takes these drugs because they're just frustrated. How many times before the age of 40 did my body weight go up and down, up and down? I was never really obese. I was never more than 25, 30 pounds overweight, but I was definitely overweight up until the age of 40. And when I reached 40, somehow, through all the work I did in yoga practice and meditation and talking to my mentors, I started to develop a lifestyle that was a little more healthy. I still don't eat perfectly. I still eat a certain amount of junk food. I don't exercise like as much as I should. I feel like I should always be exercising more. But the thing is, I'm always trying. I always stay in the battle. You know, they call it the battle of the bulge, right? Are you old enough to know this phrase, the battle of the bulge, the bulging belly? And it is a fight. It's a war. I think Ozempic takes you completely out of the battle, gives you a solution that may or may not be temporary, but I don't think it's a solution that you can grow with. It's only been, what, 4 or 5 years that these drugs have really been on the market for weight loss. And again, most people are taking them. They're not type 2 diabetic. They're not type 2 diabetic. They're not supposed to be taking these drugs. But I know doctors, they're flexible with their interpretation of what T2 diabetes is. So you got people who are 20 pounds overweight, not even that old, going on these drugs. So I think you should stay in the battle of the bulge, develop the tools, develop the psychological tools you need to eat the diet that'll keep you lean for the long term. So I'm not saying don't take these drugs to everybody, but I think similar to like antidepressants, I think most people who were prescribed them shouldn't have been. And I have thoughts on antidepressants as well, and I'll make another video on drugs like benzos and SSRIs. I'll make another video on that another time. I want to do a little more research first, but anyhow, guys, that's the journal. I'm going to make all different types of videos. This is one of them, but just a sit down and talk video. And I hope you got some benefit out of it. Please drop me a comment. Have you taken Ozempic? Are you struggling with your weight? And I appreciate your support. Thanks.